Hey guys, this is Dave with Gazzadio. Today we're going to be taking a look at the M15S DAP. The M15S comes in at $999 and follows in the footsteps of the original M15, but it's not just purely based on the M15, which was released about 3 years ago. It actually implements some of the same technical features found in Fiio's flagship M17 DAP, but the design itself is based on the original M15. So yes, this is a DAP, but one of its main selling features is that aside from being a portable digital audio player, it also has a desktop mode and actually has some real practical desktop features. And it comes with a desktop dock with a cooling fan. So the Fiio M15S is all about versatility. So let's go over what's included in the box. Of course, we have the DAP itself. It also comes with a very nice case, the DK3S desktop cooling stand, a Type-C to Type-C cable, and a Type-C to Type-A adapter. So we'll talk about the M15S itself in a minute, but I just quickly want to talk about the cooling feature on the DK3S. And if you look at the top of the DK3S, you'll notice a little switch, and this switch has 3 positions. The first position turns the fan off, the second position puts the fan in low, and then the last position puts the fan in high mode. And the fan is actually powered via USB from your laptop or PC, but here's the thing. There's a reason for this fan, and when we dive into the specifications and features, we'll talk about that. But let's quickly go over the inputs, outputs, buttons, and knobs. The M15S has a 5.5-inch touchscreen with a resolution of 1440 by 720, which for this size screen is actually fine. The display itself is nice and bright, so it does do pretty well in daylight. And if you look at the top, we have a dedicated volume wheel with a multicolored format light indicator, a 3.5 single-ended, a 2.5 balanced, and a 4.4 balanced output. On the left is your power button and playback controls, and on the right is a hold switch, which basically disables the controls and display whenever you want to put the device in your pocket. Below that, we have additional volume control buttons if you prefer to use those over the volume wheel, and then there is a mode button. And then on the bottom, there's a Type-C input and a micro SD slot. Now I want to get into the features and specifications, but I want to start with one of the main selling points of the M15S, which is versatility. And these are some of the features that I talked about that are carried over from the flagship M17 DAP. And I mentioned that there is a reason, again, for them supplying a dock with a cooling feature, and that is because if you want to use this as a desktop player, and if you have a fast charger, what will happen when you plug the fast charger into the M15S, you'll be prompted with 2 options. You can select ultra high mode, which ups the power output from 990 milliwatts at 32 ohms up to 1200 milliwatts out of the 2.5 and 4.4 balanced outputs, and from 395 milliwatts up to 580 milliwatts at 32 ohms out of the 3.5 output. And it also increases the power supply of the amp module to plus 7.6 volts, which is pretty awesome. Now, the second option puts you into desktop mode, which basically bypasses the battery and exclusively uses only the power being supplied via USB. So your battery is neither being charged nor discharged. Now, I know they do have the temperature protection feature built into the device. However, depending on how hard you push it, there is still the possibility of it generating a little extra heat, hence the cooling fan on the stand. Now, another very cool feature is the mode selection feature, which is accessible by pressing the menu button on the right side, or you can also access that through the quick settings as well. And what this does is gives you 6 different scenarios to choose from. Android mode, which is the default mode. Pure music mode, which uses the Fiio Music Player app exclusively. AirPlay mode, so you can wirelessly connect to devices, iOS devices. USB DAC mode, so the M15S acts as a DAC when connected to a PC or a phone via USB. Then Bluetooth receiving mode, which allows you to stream music from another device to the M15S over Bluetooth. And then finally, Rune Ready mode, which allows you to connect to your Rune core via Wi-Fi, so you can stream high-res audio files to your M15S from your PC or laptop. Now, as for the general specifications and features, the M15S features Android 10 and uses the Snapdragon 660, has 4 gigs of RAM and 64 gigs of internal storage. However, it also has a micro SD slot and is compatible with cards up to 2 terabytes. It also has a 6200 milliamp battery and should give you about 10.5 hours of playback time. Now, on the sound side, the M15S uses an ES9038 Pro 8-channel DAC chip and can decode up to DSD 512 and PCM 32-bit. As for the Bluetooth side, the M15S features Bluetooth 5.0 and uses the Qualcomm QCC5124 Bluetooth chip, and it can decode basically all of the most common Bluetooth codecs, including aptX, aptX LL, aptX HD, aptX Adaptive, LDAC, SBC, and AAC. Okay, so let's talk about the sound of the M15S. So of course, I tested the M15S the same way I test all of my DAPs, trying all the different modes and testing it with a variety of IEMs and headphones. The M15S does also offer several different filter options, but as usual, I kept it in its default filter mode for testing purposes, which is the fast roll-off minimum phase filter. As for the overall sound presentation of the M15S, it's neutral. And while there might be just a slight hint of warmth in the mids, for me it lands almost directly in the middle, so it doesn't lean too far towards being clinical or cold, nor is it overly warm. And just to break it down a little further, starting with the bass, the overall bass presentation is again linear, so it's not emphasized over any other part of the frequency spectrum. As for bass speed and clarity, it's excellent, and when it comes to dynamics and impact, it provides ample amounts of both. Now, as far as the overall sound presentation, it's not quite as dynamic and engaging as my M11 Plus. It's still engaging enough though. Plus, it actually improves speed, control, and accuracy over the M11 Plus. And the biggest improvements in the bass performance of the M15S over the M11 Plus was with full-size headphones, especially in desktop mode. And the improvements were across the board, not just in the bass response. But just to clarify, with IEMs, that difference was just a little less apparent. And remember, the M11 Plus uses the THX AAA 78 amp chips, and I think that's what gives it a little more of that dynamic presentation compared to the M15S. That being said, again, the M15S noticeably improves over the M11 Plus in almost every other regard. Mid-range detail and clarity are also excellent. Instruments and vocals sound natural. There's excellent note decay and just the right amount of note weight. As for the treble, it's detailed well extended, so nothing is missing in the upper treble. Cymbals sound natural and have good energy, but they're never harsh or overly splashy sounding. So while there is very good treble energy, it never becomes grating or harsh. Now, as far as technicalities, the overall detail retrieval of the M15S is excellent. And while it may not be the best that I've heard, it comes really close to some of the best DAPs and even desktop stacks that I've heard. Now, one of the tracks I use frequently for testing soundstage and imaging is off of Macy Gray's Stripped album. The whole album is great, but the first track, which is called Annabelle, is the one I'll typically use for testing. And the way they have the instruments panned or laid out is the guitars on the left, bass is on the right, drums and vocals are centered. Now, some of the cymbals are panned soft left and soft right, but the snare and kick are centered. And the M15S placed them almost perfectly. Of course, as I always say, the device will only perform as well as your IEMs or headphones. That being said, the M15S gave me a nice natural soundstage, and again, the instrument's placement and focus was excellent. It also had just the right amount of instrument and vocal note weight. But I think the star of the show for me is a couple of things. Firstly is how natural instruments and vocals sound, and secondly is how well this retrieves detail. So would I recommend the M15S? Well, going back to my comparison to the M11 Plus, I will say this: if you already own the M11 Plus and only own IEMs, then you're probably okay not upgrading, because the sound improvements, while noticeable, aren't drastic enough in my opinion to justify spending the extra $1,000. But if you're in the market for a DAP and you're trying to choose between the two, and you have both IEMs and headphones, especially harder to drive headphones, then I would definitely recommend the M15S, because it's going to give you almost double the power output of the M11 Plus, and it's just generally more versatile. Now, in terms of how it competes on the grand scale and other DACs, stacks, and devices in this price range. Now, I mentioned a minute ago that in terms of detail retrieval, it's not the best I've heard, but it definitely comes very close. But it's not just close in regards to detail. It's, again, across the board. So it has a nice linear presentation. It's very transparent. It's very resolving, completely quiet if you have sensitive IEMs, very powerful, and while $1,000 is a lot of money, when you take all of that into consideration and then add in the fact that on top of it being portable, it's also a great desktop solution, then if you are in the market for something like this, then the M15S might be your solution. And I just absolutely love the M15S. It's been a great device so far, and just my overall experience, even the unboxing, everything about this, it has just been awesome. And right now, it is my new favorite go-to DAP of all the DAPs that I own. So that concludes my review of the Fiio M15S. If you're new to the Giz Audio channel and you like our videos, please take a minute and hit that subscribe button. And if you want to go a step further with your support, we also now have a Patreon. I'll make sure and leave a link in the description. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch this video. Please like this video. Please share this video. I hope you have an awesome day.